Hi, my name is Morten, and in this video we will be building the product page for our webshop. So we've just experienced how we could do product listing, and our product listing led us to a URL that would show us the product page. So what I've done is that I've set up my product page in the CMS, and now I can use my product controller here to bootstrap the information for the website. So we're actually ready to begin building here now. So this is sort of one of the same exercises. Again, we bootstrap a page in the CMS, and our page results in an MVC controller being called, and in here we can facilitate the Ucommerce API. So that's sort of business as usual. So let's try to dive into it. I have my index method up here where I have my product model, and now I need to grab the current product from the current context, and then we can grab whatever data that we need. So again, we need to grab some APIs from the IRC container of Ucommerce. To do that, we will be using Object Factory like we have done a bunch of times. And the first thing that I'm interested in is actually grabbing the product that we're looking at right now. Remember, the URL will determine the context for what category and what product we're looking at, and that will just happen using the catalog context. It expects a URL like the one we have already generated. So I will inject my APIs. First off, I need a catalog context. And that comes from the IRC container. We want to grab it from there. To access the IRC container, we use ucommerce.infrastructure. And on that we have Object Factory where we can grab the instance and resolve the catalog context. So we just ask for the interface we're interested in. Just like this. We've done this a few times before already. Alright, so we have the catalog context now. So in our index method, we can now grab current product. And the current product is of the search models. And Ucommerce will automatically figure all this out as we have talked about a couple of times. So now we can extract the information from the product that we need. Remember that it's a multi-language solution, and Ucommerce will automatically figure all that out. So we just have to care about the information that we actually need. So things that are multilingual will be in the correct language, and fields that are shared across languages will also just be the same, like the Skew, for example. So the Skew is one of the things that we are interested in, as we need the Skew when we add our product to cart. We will be doing that on this page here as well in just a few minutes. So let's start out by mapping the Skew to our view model. So this is just sort of take data from one and map it over to the other. We could also just return the search model directly into the UI, but it's nice to have a separation so the view runs just on the view model. That's how I like to do it, but you can use whatever best practice you feel is the best. So we want to take the display name as well. So Skew is not language specific. That's just core data for the product. But display name is something that varies across languages. But we treat them the same here because they come back correctly from the index. Let's take the image as well. And the image URL will be indexed to the index, so it looks like it should. Images are, of course, a little bit special because we have two standard images on the product, and you can then add in more images if you want to. If the image should be language specific, then you can just make that multilingual, and you can have a multilingual image as well. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how that would work as well. So again, the image is just what it is. We can just show that in an image tag on the storefront. So these are some of the core things that we would expect to see when we visit a product page. But then we of course also have the pricing, which is a little bit special here as well. Prices will be indexed into the index with how they look in the back office, which is without VAT. It's just a list price without VAT, and there's no discounts taken into account here as well. So when we present a price, we of course want to get it as close to the actual price that the customer wants to pay. That means we have to apply tax to it. We have to run it through the discount system, the marketing foundation of Ucommerce, to figure out if there are any discounts associated with it. We could also just choose to display it as is and let the user aware that it's subject to VAT and discounts. But if we want to show the correct price for the customer, we have to calculate it. To do that, we need to use catalog library. So we need to inject catalog library. We have done that a couple of times on the previous pages as well. So again, grabbing that from the IC container. We need to have it as an interface, of course. There we go. And now on our product model, we can just map the prices directly. And on the calculate prices, we take in a list of product goods. And the reason we do that is because we want to optimize it for product listing. So you calculate prices for a batch of products in one go. Here we only have a single product, so we will just grab a new list with just a single product good in it. Variants can have special pricing as well. So if we know that that's the case for our web shop, we can grab the variants on the product. We will map those in a second anyways, and then pass that in together with the product family here. But for now, I will just create a new list with just this single product. Like that. Our calculate prices methods gives us back a product price calculation result with a bunch of prices on it. We could also pass in a list of price group goods. I have chosen not to pass that in here because I just have a single price for my product. And Ucommerce will grab the right price group from the catalog in the context, which means that it will automatically figure out in what price my product should be shown. So if I swap to another catalog, then a different price group will be shown. But if I have a special requirement that I want to show a sales price and a list price, or I don't know, whatever price you want to show on the storefront, that happens from time to time, then you can grab the prices in that price group that you have actively added for your products as well. But we just have one price here, so I don't have to care about that for now. And lastly, here I want to also map my variants. which is just a composite pattern in Ucommerce. A variant is also a product. In this case, I can grab my variants on catalog library. On the product model here, on current product, the variants are just a list of goods, so I need to ask catalog library to fetch them for me. In the index, we don't have any lazy loading or stuff like that. We just have whatever references that make sense in the domain, like variants for product. Those are mapped as a GUID that you then actively have to also load to show them. So here we will call map variants. We take in a list of variants on catalog library. We can call get variants for a product. Like this. And then now I just have to fill in the blanks down here. In this particular case, I could also map the same thing. So when you swap variants, you will then update the price and the image. In this case, I'm just interested in keeping it simple. So I want to show just the information that I need, which is the display name for the variant as well as the variant SKU. When we add a product to cart, we need the SKU and the variant SKU for the product that we're adding in, as we can see here in the HTTP method. So that's the information I want to map for now. It could of course be more excessive if you wanted to do that. So I'll just call variants.select. And create a new product view model. And then to list here in the end. And then I map the name. And I map the variant SKU. I don't need to actually map the SKU as well, because that's the same as our parent model. So it will just be what it is. And we don't have to do anything besides this. So that's actually it. Let's try to build the solution and see if it works. My solution was built, and I'm now on the software category here on my product listing that we created in the previous exercise. So here I have a product with variants that costs 115 euros. So let's try to visit it. And here we have the page that we just created. We have an image, we have the price up here, and then we also have the available variants. And that's actually it. This is what we did. The variants here have the name, and what we should be able to do now is be able to add the product to cart using the selection here, which would be a combination of the SKU and variant SKU, which are being posted back by a form that we have on the storefront. Notice here that the price is 115 euros. If we take a look in the back office under the software category, we also have the product here. You can see that the price for this product here is 100 euros. That doesn't really match what we see in the front end here, which is 115, but that's because the prices in the back office are without VAT and discounts taken into to the consideration. So that's also why we did the calculate prices method on the product. So always pricing from the calculate prices method will be calculated based on the catalog price group that we have, as well as marketing foundation taken into account. So that's it. We now have a product on our storefront. Let's try to explore the API to add our product to carts. So I will go back to my product controller here, And all we have to do is basically call the Ucommerce API to add to cart. We already have the method bootstrapped here, and the storefront will have a form that posts back to this method. That's fairly straightforward. You can explore the razor for that if you are in doubt how that works. But fairly standard MVC stuff going on in my CMS here. So I can use transaction library to add to cart, but I don't have that in here right now, so I need to inject that as well. I think I'll just be lazy in this case and copy paste my catalog library property. So I need to not reference the implementation, but the interface. There we go. So now I can access transaction library down here, and this is actually the first time that we use transaction library, which is now in a point where we start to go away from presenting data on the storefront using catalog library to actually engaging with the transaction system of Ucommerce, which is why we're now using transaction library instead. So we try to split them into functional interfaces that gives you what you need in terms of either browser or checkout. So for the rest of the masterclass, we will more or less just be using transaction library to do the checkout flow, all the way from collecting address information to adding shipments and payments and checking out. Alright, so let's add our product to cart. We need to give it a quantity. We have that as part of the method here. That was also part of the front end. If we specify 0 or less, Ucommerce will actually remove the product in the cart. And now I need to specify either a GUID or a Skew. And what we have here is a Skew for the product and the variant, like this. So the first piece here is that we are now specifying Skew and variant Skew for our product. The reason we do that is that Ucommerce needs this information when we add it to cart. We don't specify the actual product object, but a reference to the product instead. Once we specify that information, Ucommerce will automatically figure out the rest. Notice we don't specify a price here either. We can do that. We can specify a unit price in case that we need to. We can also specify another price group if we need to add it in a pricing from another price group where the price is already configured. By leaving this blank, we will just get the price as is on the database. The catalog context will automatically figure out what price to use. All right. So here we are specifying a Skew and a variant Skew, but if you remember from the definitions talk and the product presentation, we have the notion of variants. That's also what we show in our storefront. But we can also run in a mode where the variance does not exist for our products. The way that you handle this is basically just by passing in the variant Skew as you would expect it to be there always. That's also what the API expects. It can be null in this case. So if you are presenting a page where there are no variant Skew, just go ahead and paste in null here, then Ucommerce will figure it out as well. So it's the same method signature regardless of you're working with variants or just straight up products. The only thing that you need to be aware of is that if your product is a product family, where you then specify the Skew and no variant Skew, then Ucommerce will throw an exception saying that that's not a possible thing to do. A product family is a product that are expected to contain variants. So in that case, it has to be a variant, because we have taken a decision in the APIs that it does not make sense to purchase a product that contains variant. It has to be a specific one in that case. But it's sort of an edge case if you use the APIs like this. What we're doing here in the video, everything should be just fine. And then we have two parameters here that I want to talk about as well. Add to existing line, also an optional parameter that defaults to true, which means that if I try to add the same product over and over again, the quantity will just be upped by the quantity you specify here. If you want the ability to add to a new line, that's also possible by specifying false. It will look for a combination of the skew and the variant skew, and it has to determine that. And last thing here, which is one of the more important ones in terms of using the APIs in a proper way, execute basket pipeline defaults to true. And what is the basket pipeline, you ask? Well, that's a concept in Ucommerce that runs a series of steps that needs to happen when you add a product to your cart, or in general when you modify the basket. Every time that happens, then as a rule of thumb, always also execute the basket pipeline. There will be a different video about pipelines, and in particular what the basket pipeline is. There will also be a link that explains that on the doc side. So we shouldn't go into too much detail about it now, but you just have to know that whenever you modify the basket, then execute the basket pipeline. And the responsibility of the basket pipeline, which is basically just a component that runs a series of steps, is to make sure that the basket is in a state where it's ready to be checked out. So for example, you add a new product. So one of the tasks that it does is that it adds the proper discounts from marketing. It calculates shipments. It calculates subtotals, tax, and lastly also the order total, so that all the totals, all the numbers of the basket match what it should when you add a new product or remove a product for that matter as well. So that's the responsibility of the basket pipeline, and it has been designed so it's very easy to hook into that process. So if you have some custom business logic that needs to run, I see in maybe 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 solutions that an extension to the basket pipeline is needed. So it's a very, very common extension point, and it's very powerful, and we will dive into more details about that in a later video. For now, we're just adding our products to the cart here using this line, and we actually don't have to do anything else. All we have to do now is return index and see that it works on the storefronts. So let's build the solution and see how it works. All right, we have the page reloaded here after we built the solution. So let me try to select a variant and click Add to Cart. And what we can see now is that we have a single product in our cart, and the order total is 150 euros. So the mini basket up here has been pre-built for you, so you don't have to do that. We will actually explore the same APIs to build the basket page as we have to build the mini basket up here in the next video. So that's it. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.